And now the official bio. Denise is an author, journalist, and producer. Her new book, We Gather Together, arrived today, November 10th. Her last book, The Last Castle, was an instant New York Times bestseller in both hardcover and paperback, and was also a Wall Street Journal bestseller. She is also the author of The Girls of Atomic City, which is a New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and NPR bestseller, and has been published in multiple languages. She lives right here in Western North Carolina. And this evening, Denise is going to be in conversation with Rocco DiSpirito. He's a James Beard award-winning chef, healthy lifestyle crusader, and a #1 New York Times bestselling author who is dedicated to proving that healthy and delicious are not mutually exclusive. Rocco is also the author of 13 books, which have been translated into multiple languages and sold all over the world. His latest, Keto Comfort Food Diet, was released in March and shows readers how to eat the foods you miss and still lose up to a pound a day. So welcome, Denise and Rocco.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here. Welcome, Denise, to the Launch Your Book During a Pandemic Club.
Thank you. I know. Yeah. I was going to say, you've kind of gone through. Oh, but really, thank you, because there's launching your book in a pandemic. There's agreeing to be in conversation with an author who's launching their book in a pandemic. And then there's actually agreeing to be in conversation with that author the first night of their virtual tour. So good for you.
Breaking lots of new ground here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Breaking lots of new ground.
Thank you so much for jumping on this train wherever it happens to go.
It's my pleasure. And I think we need to thank our common friend, Wiley Cash.
Yes, that's
right.
Right. That's
it's all his doing.
That's right. Yeah. Also a good friend of independent bookstores everywhere, and a great friend of Malaprops. And yeah, Wiley was the one because I'm talking to him when I do my one of my talks on Friday at Parnassus in Nashville. And I was saying, oh, what should I do for Malaprops? What should I do for Malaprops? And he goes, oh, you got to talk to Rocco. I was like, okay. And it totally worked out.
You got to talk to me. I'm the guy to talk to at Malaprop. I'm a friend of independent bookstores, by the way. I love independent bookstores. I fight with my publishers all the time about going into independent bookstores, but I feel like authors like you and Wiley and Adriana Trigiani have really figured out how to be friends and remain friends with independent bookstores and become lifelong friends. I'm working on that. I need to figure out how to do that. I probably should stop asking my publisher for help.
Yeah, ask Wiley and I for help. We'll totally hook you up. No, it's like it's your home. You know, it really it's your home, and you go in there, and I mean that's what's so weird about tonight is, you know, I've launched this is the third book in a row that I've launched with Malaprops, and you know this night is usually, you know, you're in the store and you see everybody you know, and you see the booksellers you know, and it's just so great and it's so celebratory. And this is still celebratory, and I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so happy I can do this with Malaprops, but I'm alone in my living room trying to decide where to put the flowers, you know? I mean, so it's just like you
did a great job staging that corner. I love it.
I love it. You got the whole, you know, skyline thing going. But I did want it to be celebratory. So I'm going to do this. So you're not supposed to do this with your shirt, right? That would be frowned upon in a restaurant, like sticking this, you know,
Oh, wow. Look at you. Yeah, that's incredible.
So I'm going to do this, but
you should have told me.
All right.
I would have prepared one.
I'll pseudo pour some for you, but I'm going to try. You're supposed to do it slow, right? So you don't.
Yeah, slow. It's.
I'm going to knock the webcam off.
I don't know if this is.
Is this a good idea?
Something you want to hear, but the sommelier would always say it should sound like angels passing wind. Believe it or not, that's how they teach you.
Like that. Okay, I'm sorry to leave you out of this, but you know, this is a launch like none other I've ever had. So what the heck?
This is amazing. Wow.
Good.
Amazing. Good for you. Good idea. I'm going to pop one open later and I'll
please
retroactively cheers you.
Yes. So did you go through this with your book in the spring?
I did. Yeah. My tour was canceled. Of course, it was mid-March and I was traveling all over. And, this was the first shutdown. Remember, it was going to be 2 weeks at home.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, after this 2 week period, this lovely 2 week period where we'll get to, enjoy our friends and family, sans interruption, we will go out and resume the book tour and everything will go back to normal. Of course, we all know what happened and here we are still waiting. But it's interesting because virtually I was able to talk about the book to lots of people in formats similar to this one. I'm sure not as charming as the Malaprop bookstore or being there in person, but I'm not even in my own apartment. I had a flood in my apartment. So I broke into a stranger's apartment so hopefully they don't come home during this conversation. Otherwise, if you see me run out quickly or the police arrive, you'll know why.
Oh my God, I'm doing anything to make these Zoom events interesting. So honestly, kind of
unique.
Cross my fingers for the arrest. I mean, no offense,
unique.
But yeah.
It's funny. We never talk to our neighbors. You lived in New York City, you told me, and you generally never talk to your neighbors, but you always know where they put their spare key.
Totally.
So I was able to get in very easily. I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm actually allowed to be in here for now. But I had a major flood. A lot of books were ruined. It made me cry. It made me tear up. I had to throw away books. I'm not used to throwing away books. I'm used to collecting books, and I treasure every book, even if it's multiple copies of the same book. And there were so many that I literally spent hours thinking, how could I save this book? What could I do? Can you dry it out? And
blow dryers.
Once it's gone, it's gone. So my book collection dwindled. So I was really happy to hear that I was getting a copy of yours. It's a perfect way to start my new collection, my new 2020 book collection.
Oh, good. I'm glad to be a founding part of
yeah, you'll be a founding member of the fresh batch of books for 2020.
Oh, thank you so much.
So at Malaprops, do you normally have champagne and do people bring food?
Sometimes we have little cocktail hours, like wine and cheese things beforehand.
Yeah.
I usually have some sort of after something somewhere where I'm not, not quite as hemmed in as I am in a bookstore. But it's always it's the smiling faces. It's getting to see people. It's getting to catch the eye of someone you haven't seen in a while, who you didn't expect to show up, who showed up, and they're in there with you, and they decided to come out and support you. And because I think we're kind of similar in this way, is that there's doing the work that you like to do, and then there's promoting the work, which is a whole other weird thing in a way.
Yes. It's a big topic of conversation for chefs. How much do you want to be the product, and how much do you want to sell the product? How do you split the difference, and how do you walk that fine line? I
mean, as a creative individual, and I think it's much worse for chefs, because restaurants, especially, and television shows and things like that, have these sort of outside, just like these huge machines and personalities, and we're sort of these people who kind of live alone in our yoga pants for months, and then we come out and like have to talk to people about what we do. And it's an adjustment. It's definitely an adjustment. So where do you, and then this thing that's been your own, whether it's your recipes or your cookbook, or a book like the one I did, this thing that was just sort of with you is now kind of out there, and it's not yours anymore, in a sense. Is that always the letting go for me is very strange. I don't know if you go through that.
I've always wanted to be an author. My father really prized writers, and I grew up hearing that being a writer is the closest thing to being, a godlike or that you could do on earth. It's, educating and informing people through the written word. was something my dad adored. And he, of course, came from, war-torn Italy, so he never got to finish his education. And so when we all graduated college and then went on to do more things, writing was always top of my list. And I thought about the process that I'd always heard about, where, you would go to some camp somewhere and, shut yourself in for months and just write, from your head. But for cookbook authors, it's a little different. We're in the kitchen a lot. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of, research and development, because we have to talk about recipes that need to function in a home kitchen. So it's a little different for us, but there's definitely a moment of release when it's all done that makes you feel incredibly satisfied. But the best part is when you go to that book signing at your local, and mine is Book Review in Huntington, and the people who've been coming for years keep showing up, even though you were so tired the last time they saw you. They keep showing up, and for me, they've used my recipes and they've cooked from my book, and they've, in most cases, lost some weight or transformed their health in some meaningful way. And so I get to see some tangible results every once in a while, which is, thrilling, and very difficult to describe how thrilling that is. I work privately with private clients as well, and I coach people, and I provide them with a subscription meal service. So I work with people hands-on, and I get feedback from those people, but it's nothing like hearing from people who just bought your book that you never met. And so I think it's a little different from the kinds of writers that you and Wiley are. I always thank them when they invite me to their signings for inviting and a cookbook author to their proper author shindig. So yeah, you guys do actual research. There's affidavits, sworn testimony, the serious stuff to get one of your type of books together, and especially for Wiley, who and Wiley and Adriana, who write fiction, and it's amazing. So thank you for inviting me to share this moment with you. But there's nothing I treasure more than creating what are going to be hopefully transformative experiences through a recipe or a series of recipes. And unfortunately, to answer your original question, you have to promote it in order for people to know about it. It doesn't promote itself. I think in our lifetime, we went from only having to produce a great product and allow word of mouth to take control of how it markets or how it becomes marketed, to having to market first and foremost, almost sometimes having to sacrifice a little bit of the time you would spend on the product. So I think we're sort of, about halfway through the circle. Hopefully it goes back to the original, where all you had to do was be a great creator and create a great product.
Right.
What do you think?
You have these, you have these situations now where, someone on Twitter, Instagram, it's like, well, what's the new book about? And you just think to yourself, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I spent years thinking about this book. I don't know what to say. But I would probably be remiss if I don't say a little bit about what my book is about. And it's always what's hard for me, and I don't know if you get this way with your books. When people sort of ask you what your inspirations are or where you get your ideas, it's just, for me, it's almost never like a really, really simple answer. It's the culmination of conversations I've had, people who've influenced me, experiences, something I saw, a picture, a song. And, with We Gather Together, I had known about Sarah Josepha Hale for a long time, who was this, 19th century woman without a formal education who went on to, be a major player in the media, and who was obsessed with Thanksgiving and wanted there to be a single Thanksgiving day for the entire country, and started petitioning, presidents about that. I had known about her, but I don't really write biographies. So I just kind of set her aside years ago. And then I was thinking about gratitude, because, especially in, like, I would say the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of gratitude research that's been done, the neurological benefits of treating yourself well, eating well. You of course are familiar with things like mindful eating, savoring, and like just really sort of being present in your life and being appreciative in your life. And actually the neurological and health and emotional benefits of being able to do that, even when your life isn't going so great. And then I still just kind of couldn't find a way into this story. And then I just started thinking about the fact that the national holiday came together and began its, streak of continuous Thanksgivings in the middle of the Civil War. And I thought, well, that's really interesting that there was a holiday that was about coming together that really began to take root when people did not want to come together. And then how those traditions, so I just started looking at American history and world history through this relationship with giving thanks. And for me, a big part of that, because we both come from, I'm Kiernan, but I'm half, Lamia Giovanone. So
wow, that's
yeah.
more syllables than my name.
Yeah. So
you got me beat by 2 syllables.
So a big part of that, and a part of the book, and certainly a part of how I share experiences with people who are important to me, is centered on food and being grateful for food. And one of the opening scenes in the book actually is me trying to have Thanksgiving in Rome. And you, I know, are a fan of Rome, as I am.
I am a fan of Rome. You've touched on so many topics that are important to me. If there was ever a time where we could take a moment to be thankful for what we have, now is the time. My parents come from what I called war-torn Italy, and they came to the United States and all of a sudden experienced abundance. And when we were growing up, they wouldn't throw away an eggshell. They would keep everything, recycle everything, reuse everything. And obviously the collective American spirit is not about recycling and reusing, and we're getting back to that a little bit. And I was talking to another chef yesterday about how much we have to be grateful for right now. And if you have a roof over your head and someone to talk to and a meal coming your way, you have everything. You literally have everything. Everything you've ever worked for, thought about, really can be just put together in that one moment at the table. And so I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely a very important time for us to reconsider what we want, what we're working for, why we're working, who we're working with, and what we're working towards. But one thing comes to mind over and over and over as I think about your book and Sarah Josepha Hale is how many other Sarah Josepha Hales are there, and how many books would you have to write to talk about the important women who have not gotten their share of attention in the past 100 years? It would be millions, if not hundreds of thousands of books.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Her story is incredible, and I'd never heard of it, and it's only thanks to you that I know about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to women have played a big part in several.
As far as I can tell, women play a big part in just about everything.
That's it, right?
Kind of run everything and kind of make sure everything gets done. Yeah.
So people will say, oh, well, you write women's history, and I would say, no, I don't. I just write history.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of women that have always been. They've always been there. Yeah. I'm not writing a particular kind of history, just writing normal history, just taking some of the people who are always in there, back in there. But she is, and what's interesting is other women come in and out of the book, like Sojourner Truth makes an appearance in the book, Harriet Tubman makes an appearance in the book, Lydia Maria Child makes an appearance in the book. And every time I would start to mention one of these women, I would be saying to myself, oh, I should say something about this thing they did. I should say something about this thing they did. And it was like, I can't, I can't. They're very important, but that's not what this particular part of the book is about. And then, so going back to what you said is, there are just so many stories that plenty for people to tell. That's for sure. I mean, whenever I talk to younger writers, I'm always like, there's no shortage of stories that people haven't heard. Believe me, there are plenty of them out there. And
have you had pushback that you've had to deal with, or is it easier now to sell a book about a heroine like Sarah Josepha Hale? I know when I first started to try to publish books about health in 2004, I got pushback for years, and I couldn't sell a book because I was so committed to health and wellness. They said no to me for 3 or 4 years until I finally convinced someone. Was it similar? Was it similar for you?
It's after you've done it for a little while, it gets easier.
Yeah.
When I did, for instance, when I did the Girls of Atomic City years ago, that one almost didn't make it. And
right.
It was.
That was 2009, right? I think.
That was 2000.
If I read your bio correctly.
Yeah, I was selling. Yeah, it came out in 2013. I had started working on it in like 2006 or 2007.
Wow. Yeah.
And was just.
We should have a side conversation about how long it takes to publish a book. By the way, I always talk about it. Let's not forget because it's fascinating. But you continue. I just want to make sure we don't forget to talk about it.
Well, but that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because there were some very strange things that became weirdly relevant in this book. So, somebody said, oh my God, it's, so you thought about, writing about like Thanksgiving during the Spanish flu and all that stuff because of everything that's going on. And I said, no. The books take a lot longer than that. The book was done.
Right.
So it's
the book was turned in a year before the pandemic, probably.
It's I mean, we were still revising and editing, but what's weird is, and I think all writers can relate to this, the book you conceive is different than the book you write, and the book you write is different than the book that ends up actually on the bookshelf. But what's also different is the world into which it lands. And you can't quite predict how it's going to be read, how it's going to be received, what the world is going to look like. I had no idea the world was going to look like this when I was working on this book. And, there was a part of me as things started.
So are you sort of, how do you feel about how relevant the theme is? I know that it must be a mixed bag, because obviously you're not happy about what's happening, but at the same time, it brings a lot of light to the.
Well, what's funny is I thought, at first I thought, I'm doomed. This is the worst. Seriously, I thought this is the worst time ever for just a book to come out in general.
For sure, not a great time for a new book. Yeah.
But then at the same time, like you said, I'm incredibly grateful because I get to do this for a living and I love doing it. And then as things sort of, moved on, and I thought, well, I get to do these events and be with people I wouldn't be with normally because they're from, they're all over the country. And then I thought, well, you know what, maybe it's not so bad in the middle of all this to actually, have a book about gratitude and giving thanks. And so I'm
and game-changing women and
game-changing women and
creating opportunities for other women and for, in this case, it sounds like the rest of the country, men and women.
Yeah. And it's so in that respect, I'm definitely choosing to see it that way. And I do feel very sincerely that way about the book, that she's an incredibly, she's a very inspirational character. And I do think the message of embracing gratitude and grace when things are really not going well is a timeless message, an important message, and, you know, all the more relevant now, because it's so easy to right now to just to you know to sink into, you know, how difficult things are for everyone. But like you said, you know, got a roof over your head and a meal on your table, and you know, people, you know, you care about, who care about you. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. And you know,
so true.
oh yeah, and I remember, you know, my family were the Sicilian and the Calabrese, and you know, when my mom was growing up, they would make chicken soup, but they didn't have, like, you couldn't use like a whole chicken carcass, so a lot of it was feet and necks and things. And if you got,
by the way, it makes great stock. For those of you listening who are just grossed out, it makes the best stock. Yeah.
That's right. And
Chicken
I know
feet,
the first time I told this to someone who wasn't from like a Southern Italian family, they went, the feet. I said, yeah, that's the feet. And the other thing is, like, if my mom said, if you got the foot, I mean, that was, you were lucky. Like, that was, and there might actually still be some meat on it, you know, and that was a feast, you know. And so much of what brings people together in life, and in this book too, are meals and food and traditions. And what's interesting to me is how, and I go into this in the book, is looking at how traditions evolved and changed as the country evolved and changed, as the character of the country evolved and changed. And when people arrived from other countries, how they kind of changed, you know, how they celebrated Thanksgiving. Some of them wanted to do it just like, you know, they thought the Americans did. Others were, you know, you and I have talked about blended traditions.
Our blended traditions, yeah. Lasagna at Thanksgiving, very confusing.
Oh, very confusing. Or no, you bake ziti as like an appetizer because you don't want anyone to be hungry. So, you know, that's like my husband's family is like, you know, we'll just have a tray of something out, you know, maybe some meatballs or something. We don't, you know, because we're not going to eat until later. So we're just going to have some ziti and meatballs now. And then if somebody's there who doesn't understand, they're just thinking like, okay, so they don't do turkey. Then they start eating, and then the turkey comes out and they realize there's like this whole other, you know.
Yeah. Did you have 20 years of turkey fails until you went off to college, came back and brought home the technology, so to speak? That's what happened to my family. We had many decades of turkey fail, not really fails. I mean, of course, the food was always delicious, and my mom was a superb cook, but they were definitely very untraditional and unconventional. And I sort of was the one to bring back the technology. You know, I had to go out into the world and learn how Americans do the turkey and bring it back home.
I definitely developed my own ideas about turkey and especially about gravy. I'm very particular about gravy, and I don't let anyone near me or near the stove when I'm making the gravy. You can't talk to me. Like, you have to go away.
It's a serious process, requires lots of concentration, a lot of pans, a lot of strainers. Absolutely. Very important. To this day, I have to bring the gravy. To this day, I have to bring the gravy to my family celebration because no one wants to take it on.
Oh, I love it. No, it's like, you know, the roux, I'm deglazing the pan with Madeira. I mean, it's like, you know, it's just stand back and let me do my thing.
And my 87-year-old aunt is looking at me and asking, when did the tomatoes go in? You know, how is this gravy without tomatoes? Like, no, it's not that kind of gravy.
But it's so important to be able to have, you know, all of those aspects. This is a very old tradition, you know, from this particular culture, and you know, this is how we do it, and this is the twist we've put on it. And then the funny thing is, like, years down the road, then that seems like the old way to do things once you've done it for a while.
For sure. How did Sarah Hale pitch the first Thanksgiving, or how did she see Thanksgiving?
She was one of the first and most incredibly detailed descriptions that she made of a Thanksgiving dinner was in a novel she wrote because she decided to just write a novel on the side while she was starting to, you know, edit a magazine with single-handedly raising 5 children.
My goodness.
She devoted almost an entire chapter of a novel she wrote called Northwood, and it came out in 1827. Almost an entire chapter to a Thanksgiving meal. And it goes on pages and pages and pages. And
recipes and how-to, that kind of thing? Or
actually, she did not put the recipes in the novel. She goes into, like, you know, where the turkey was and where the roast was, and plates of pickles, and, you know, this kind of juice and that kind of mulled wine, and these butters and these linens, and all of that sort of stuff. But she did, over the years, publish hundreds of recipes in separate, in the magazine, but also in these little books of receipts, as they used to call them back then, receipts. So she had recipe books and hostessing books. You know, everything from this, you know, strange sort of fish, poached fish called suji, to, you know, these Lafayette duck balls, which were like a rice concoction. I mean, just all sorts
incredible.
of yeah. And she became sort of, you know, it's funny, we talked today about you know, people on Instagram or on Twitter or wherever who are influencers, right? They're influencers. They've got, you know, 1 million followers, 2 million followers, and, you know, products will pay them to do this, that, or other in their feed or whatever. She was like the OG, you know, influencer. I mean, she was somebody who, she was telling people how to cook, what to read. That was another one of the things that really drew me to her, is she was publishing writers in her magazines before they were big names, and really giving them, you know, people like Edgar Allan Poe. She was one of the first, you know, publishers of his work in her magazine. He went to school with one of her kids, went to West Point with one of her sons.
My goodness.
Yeah, I mean,
what an incredibly rich story.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And so she was really this tastemaker who was so enthralled with tradition, and Thanksgiving was just one part of that, but she wanted it to be a national tradition, and one that we all came together for on the same day. But she was also, she helped popularize women wearing white wedding dresses. She helped.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the color before that?
Just lots of different. Not everybody wears what. Not everybody.
Oh, there wasn't a color. Got it.
So
this is probably also pre-engagement ring era, right?
Yes, and it was Queen Victoria, when she got married, wore white, and Hale was obsessed with Queen Victoria, so she just put white dresses in the magazine, and she was like, "This is what we need to do." And by the same token, there was an image she saw of Queen Victoria and her husband, and it was in an English publication. It was basically them in front of a Christmas tree, and Hale was like, "We really got to get this Christmas tree thing needs to take off here." So she helped.
Oh, that's right. She gets the credit for the Christmas tree as well.
A lot of people give her the credit for popularizing the Christmas tree, because she kept putting so much, you know, so many images of it in the magazine. And, you know, basically she said, you know, this is what Queen Victoria is doing. And, you know, she sort of had this idea, you know, when Victoria rose to the throne, she was 18, you know, and within like the first year of her reign, Hale wrote in her magazine, she said, you know, "This is wonderful. And believe me, we are going to come to refer to this age as the Victorian age, just as we did, you know, the Elizabethan age." And she was told, she was 18, Victoria was 18, and Hale was totally right. So she had this idea.
So what you're saying is she was the Kardashian of her time. Totally. She was a massive influencer. She was badass, and she really made a lot of things happen that we're still enjoying to this day.
So imagine, okay, yeah. Let's run with that, Rocco. So imagine Kim Kardashian writing 5 successive presidents, telling them that they needed to establish a national holiday. Like that's
Yeah.
like, those are the words. So she was in her world.
So is that what the process was like back then? Just writing letters? You didn't have to lobby and pay, create a super PAC, and you didn't have to go through all the nonsense. We're lobbying
the Hail Super PAC. We should start a Hail Super PAC now.
We're lobbying for in the restaurant industry. The Independent Restaurant Coalition is lobbying for in the Heroes 2 Act. We're lobbying for a restaurant fund. Save restaurants. It's $120 million or $120 billion. Sorry, we've had to create a real lobby with real lobbyists who we pay lots of money to be out there, and we have 300 sponsors, co-sponsors in Congress. So the process does work. It's very expensive. I like the idea of writing a letter much better, and I wish it was that simple today.
Have you been? And
can you imagine you could write a letter to the president?
Yeah. I'd like a holiday. Thank you. It was a lot harder than that for her. It was like decades of work, but
right.
I would think
certainly don't mean to minimize her accomplishment, of course, but hopefully it didn't sound like
that. No,
Yeah.
totally. But which reminds me before, and then I think we should look at some questions.
Sure.
Have you been to Asheville? We have quite a restaurant. You have? Okay.
Yeah, about 15 years ago. Yeah. I remember having a lot of fun. I can't say for sure that I could name a restaurant that I went to, but it was a while back. I had a great time.
A lot of the ones that are here now were not here 15.
Got it. Yeah.
We gotta get you back.
I would love to come. Maybe Malaprops will invite me.
They will
when my next book comes out next year, and I'd love to come by and do a proper sit down book signing with champagne, and I usually bring food, by the way. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. See, Malaprops is on board. I can see Stephanie already.
I love the independent bookstore tour. It's my favorite part of the whole thing. So
you get such a feel for communities and cities and towns when you see them through the eyes of an independent bookstore, I think. Yeah.
You're actually talking to people who are very likely to read the work that you're there promoting, which is really cool, right?
Yes.
Because there are cookbook collectors, and then there are cookbook users and readers. So.
Oh yeah. Would you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite go-to kind of gravy? You don't have to give away any secrets. I'm just curious.
Yes. So let me give you something that might help solve some problems. This has helped me many times in the past. So the gravy sort of makes itself in the bottom of the pan that you're roasting the turkey in. If you set up the turkey properly with the mirepoix, and it's even a little bit of water or wine, there'll be quote drippings. And if you do it right, you usually end up with a couple of cups of some sort of liquid at the bottom. So that is your base, your gravy base. And then if you're really fancy, like it sounds like you make a roux, which is butter and flour. I know, that's cool. I mean, that's definitely a step up. But you could also, and forgive me for saying this because I know it sounds like the opposite end of the spectrum, but you could also buy a bottle of Heinz pork gravy and add it to those liquids and bring it to a boil, and you'll have delicious gravy. It'll be a combination of the jarred stuff that you should never let anyone see. And I've used that trick many times to save the gravy. And it's made me sort of a gravy hero. If you go to someone's home and they're stuck, I have literally gone out to a closest store, bought Heinz gravy. It comes in a jar, and just mixed it in with whatever they're making, and it works really good.
Okay.
It works really well.
I think save the gravy.
You weren't expecting that, I know.
Or Gravy Hero should be like your next book or your next show. Gravy Hero, and like you dash into someone's home with like this hidden little thing to go save their gravy.
A little MSG, a little jarred pork gravy, and you're good to go. But usually people do way too much work and end up with very little to show for it. Gravy is much simpler than we think. You could also use arrowroot and cornstarch and much easier thickening devices and ingredients. Somehow I always end up making the gravy, because it's not really Thanksgiving dinner if there isn't a brown gravy on the turkey, right? There's got to the gravy. Because first of all, the turkey is always cold. If you carve it properly, it takes 25 minutes. And I don't know if you do that, but I always end up getting in trouble because my family's waiting. Yeah, okay. So I take the bird apart, I slice every section, I put it back together, I reassemble the bird on the carcass and make it look like it just came out of the oven. I bring my own knives. It's ridiculous. I'm such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. But if people are patient enough and we don't end up fighting about it, they usually are pretty happy with the results. So, and since we're going into Thanksgiving very soon, the one tip that I just would like to offer without anybody asking for it is don't overcook your turkey. That's the simplest way to avoid having a dry turkey. Don't overcook it. The poppers, the timers that come in the birds, when those pop up, your bird is 20 degrees overcooked. So just FYI, use a thermometer, take it out at 150 degrees, tent it with foil, let it rest. That's what the pros do. That's what you should be doing.
You heard it here. You guys are ready for Thanksgiving now.
I'm sure Sarah Josepha Hale did some version of that too. I'm sure she rested her bird.
I am going to scan some of her recipes and I'm going to send them to you.
It should. I mean, her recipe should be the ultimate Thanksgiving, right? That should be the most perfect and traditional Thanksgiving there is.
I am totally going to scan some of her recipes because I nerded out online and got a bound copy of all of her magazines from 1863, the year that Lincoln accepted her proposal to do Thanksgiving. And
wow.
There are a lot of recipes in there. Okay.
So you win Thanksgiving this year, right? When you have Thanksgiving, you won. You've already won.
Yes, I've already set the table, actually. I'm ready. I am so ready.
I bet you're not joking because Italian moms do that. They set the table a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance sometimes. That's a real thing.
If I was worried that I would trip over the ring light and knock over the champagne, I'd walk the laptop into the dining room and show you. I've set the table. Please.
So you also have a daisy chain of wires and lights and lamps behind
God,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
What's going on down here is my husband.
I had a tunnel through to get to my chair.
Yeah. All right. Let's take some. I could talk about
sure.
for another 2 hours.
I could listen to you for another 2 hours. It's really amazing. All right, I'm going into the chat. I don't know if you want me to do this, but I'm happy to.
Well, I can. We got
lots of
some.
questions.
We got some in chat, and then we have one in Q&A. But I think it was actually
okay. Go for it.
Duplicated in the chat anyway.
Sure.
But Rocco, if you want to read them out, you can, and I can just
please
sit back
feel
and
free.
listen.
Feel free.
Cool.
If you read them, I can then focus on.
Yeah, and then you don't have to
people.
like scroll or whatever. And I mean, I would also be perfectly happy to just have y'all just keep going for as long as you would like, because it's been delightful. And
if there's a Thanksgiving question, I'd love to answer it. If there's a Sarah Josepha Hale question, I'm sure Denise would love to answer.
Well, yes, exactly. But Rocco, and thank you, Rocco, for being a friend to independent booksellers as well.
Of course I am.
It's just, just thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you this evening and to have you with us. And
he will be in the store, right, Stephanie?
And you will be in the store.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So we'll pressure the.
It'll be
publicist.
March 2022.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Yeah, we'd love to have you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we could maybe even redo this lovely combination.
Oh my goodness, that would be amazing.
And maybe
don't
Denise
put Denise
can
on the
stop
spot.
by, and no promises.
Don't apply any pressure.
But it'd be super fun.
That would be really great. That would be
really
great.
Food. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, and we can. Yes, and we can have like it'll be at a time where people can stand close to each other and put things in their mouths.
Yeah, it'll be in the post-vaccine era.
Right, while in the same room.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could totally do that.
Did Sarah Josepha Hale also invent the vaccine by any chance?
You know what? I should do some more digging because honestly,
I bet you.
I left out the part about Mary had a little lamb. Have you ever?
Oh yes, I read that. Yes, that's incredible.
Her too, I mean,
wow.
It's hard to keep up.
What a slacker! And how many books could you write in?
I was doing this research and I was like, what have I been doing with my time? Oh my God.
I would go to your publisher and pitch 100 books about women like Sarah Josepha Hale, who have been overlooked by history because their stories really should be told. And I grew up watching two very strong women rule my world. I know how it works. I know that women are behind everything good that happens in the world, and we should be hearing about more of them.
Thank you, because I think that some of the thought in the industry at times is that, you know, these books don't resonate with men. And I don't believe—
Who cares, by the way?
Men
who cares?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, who cares? Hey,
who cares?
No,
yeah.
The number of men who, you know, I remember I was at Ole Miss, and, you know, just a couple of—
Exactly.
You know, like 19
Christine Fisher, destabilized the patriarchy.
19-year-old guys wearing their fraternity shirts came up to tell me how much they love the girls of Atomic City. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's right.
Well, like you said, Denise, you're not writing women's history books, you're just writing history books.
That's right.
And it just so happens that other people were writing deficient history books.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes. No, exactly. From a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah. Well, and we have questions from the audience, and I'm gonna get to those, but I'm gonna do host prerogative and just sneak in with one of my own first. Ooh. Because I know that part of what you're doing with this book, in addition to shining a light on another sort of underknown woman in history, is you're doing a little bit of kind of myth busting about Thanksgiving. You know, you're going where you didn't have to go, right? You could have just told her story and leaned into the idea of gratitude, which you do, which is wonderful. But you also took seriously the responsibility to look at Thanksgiving and the way we have come to think about it, and how much that actually differs from how it came to be, and the reality, and how much a disservice that has done to, you know, Indigenous people in particular. And, you know, so would you like to just take a moment to kind of, to talk about that?
There was a, thank you. When I said earlier, I was trying to kind of figure out a way into the story. I knew she was interesting, but I didn't want to write a biography. I knew the idea of it becoming a federal holiday during the well, actually, it wasn't officially made a holiday congressionally until World War II. But the tradition of having it, you know, every year at the end of the year started during the Civil War. That was interesting. But at the same time, you know, I've always loved Thanksgiving, but I wanted to feel, as an individual who really enjoyed Thanksgiving, and I enjoy Thanksgiving for the reasons that a lot of people do. I come together with family, I come together with friends. It's pretty relaxed. I don't have to buy presents. You know, nothing like that.
It's non-denominational.
Non-denominational. There's no particular religion associated with it.
There's no agenda.
Just coming together and eating, and then falling asleep, and then eating again. I watch the dog show. It's great. But I wanted to feel, but I've known for a very long time, as many of us have, that there are a lot of tales and traditions and stories that have been associated with American Thanksgiving, especially since like the 60s and 70s, that aren't true and do a disservice to a big part, to, you know, the original occupants of this continent. I wanted to feel good about Thanksgiving again. And luckily, I was like, but there's a perfectly good story here about the concept of Thanksgiving, which goes back to humans being on the planet, and the development of the United States and its relationship with Thanksgiving. And so I thought, I can tell a true Thanksgiving story here without having to do a disservice to Indigenous peoples or put anything out there that is false, exploited, anything like that. And at one point I thought I was going to write the whole book without even addressing that aspect of it directly, just to show, hey, look, I read a Thanksgiving book, and there were those usual stories weren't in there. But I do get into it later in the book, just kind of to draw a comparison. And basically because I think the message of the book is, Thanksgiving on this planet, Thanksgiving in this country, and Thanksgiving in this culture has evolved in many ways for a very, very long time. There's nothing to say it can't kind of, evolve a little more again and really come to represent just sort of the best of who we are. I mean, the idea of having a holiday centered on gratitude still sounds wonderful. That's wonderful. So let's get back to the essence of that and focus on that. So, we'll see. So there's a part, there are no perfect people in this book. There are no perfect people in this world. Everybody's incredible. If we only wrote books about people with unassailable characters, we'd have libraries and bookstores with a lot of empty shelves. And, but sometimes in exploring the foibles and challenges that people face and sometimes don't face well, I think it makes people more relatable. And I think the lessons that history can impart are actually that much more kind of attainable and feel more real when we can see a little bit of ourselves in some of these people, in some of these very flawed people who can still manage to have positive impacts. Mm-hmm. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, that nuance is always valuable and often stepped over. So yeah.
You can, because you can come out and say, this is what I think, but I've always kind of considered myself more of a just almost like a translator, like, well, this is what she said, and this is what she was thinking, and this is what he said, and this is what he was thinking, and this is what happened, and here it is.
Yeah. And just getting it all out there as opposed.
Just think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take a look. See what you think, have a conversation, ask some questions,
Yeah. And we'll eventually get to the point where people stop thinking about pilgrims. And
yep. Oh yeah.
Okay, so
we will, you promise?
Some people have already.
I don't, so
oh yeah, that's the whole thing. Like when she wrote these letters to these presidents, she never mentioned pilgrims. She never mentioned any event. She just didn't. It had nothing to do with her conversation when she was
just like, yay, gratitude. Yeah. Okay, so Denise, a question specifically for you, and Rocco, we do have a Thanksgiving question for you. So that'll be the second one.
Okay.
So first, our first question was from Mary. How did you find this story? Did you do specific research looking for it, or was it serendipity?
Yes. Yes to all of that. So I know these sound like these questions should be easy to answer, and they're so hard to answer sometimes, but I totally appreciate the question, Mary. So something will catch my interest. And I will start if it catches enough, I will start a file on it. These files used to be all on paper because I'm that old, and then they went to computers, and then Post-its and all that sort of stuff, and I've got files all over the place. So years ago, Sarah Josepha, and I don't even remember. I do not remember where I first came across her. I think it was in a book while I was researching something else, and I was like, that's interesting. And, I'll write it down. And then, on a day when I'm looking for something to do, I'll, see what I can find. I'll go, we're very lucky now because while most things you sort of have to go, to archives to get stuff, a lot more is available online now, which is good. Happy Trust is amazing. They have scanned a huge number, like all of her old magazines that she edited have been scanned. And that's
you don't miss those epic microfiche moments.
Oh my God. Oh no, I still had some of those. And I went to the because I was researching this before the pandemic and everything, and I did go to I was at the archives at the New York Public Library in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue, and to research the U.S. Sanitary Commission, which was this big voluntary organization during the Civil War. And they had great information about like Elizabeth Blackwell, one of the first women to get a medical degree in America, and nursing and all that sort of stuff. And they would raise money to actually have Thanksgivings for wounded soldiers and things like that during the war. So to go back to the question, so Hale's like floating around in my head. And then I was having a conversation with somebody about Thanksgiving, and I was like, Thanksgiving's so interesting. And then, I see something on, and then something, I make mind maps, which are about as messy as these sentences that I've been saying right now, where something is like this, I draw circles, and this connects to this, and this connects to this. And
it's like a murder board. It
is. It's just like a murder board. And it's sometimes I go back and I will look in my notebooks, and I'll look at something and I'll just think that's a horrible idea. What were you thinking? And then other times I'll look, and sometimes it's also just not the right time for a particular book. In fact, the book I thought I was going to do now, this was going to be after that. The book I was going to do was going to be after this. I can't talk about it yet, but it was like they got swapped. And that was just because I was actually having a conversation with a trusted friend, and I was talking about it, and it just sort of, sometimes it just clicked. It was like, no, it's time to do this. I don't know. It's, something, you hope you're right when you do these things. Like I said, when I was writing this book, I had no idea that, when it came out, we'd be in the middle of all this. So it's a combination.
And then sometimes your editor changes the title on you or takes out a section, and right? Tell them about that stuff. That's crazy interesting. I always find that really interesting.
I love when people say that, I love the title and the subtitles, like, thanks. That was all me. My publicist is on here. She's probably laughing. Like, you have great conversations with your team, but so many brains go into parsing like the titles and the subtitles. And I always save all the different covers, so many different versions of the cover. I really love this one, but
it's a beautiful cover.
I like it a lot. But you go through so many different covers, and it's funny, you feel differently about the book depending on what the cover and the font looks like. You get really into it. So a lot of these things, they evolve over time, and conversations you have change the way you're thinking about it. And then, I'm a big outliner. I before I even talk to the editor, like I have an outline of what I think the book should be. That'll change once I start writing. Then when you go back to revise, even before I've turned it in, usually changes a little bit more. And because you just keep finding things, and it makes you want to go in, new and different connections. There was this wonderful story about the 54th Massachusetts, the first ever all Black regiment in the Army in the Civil War. The movie Glory was about the 54th, and there was a great Thanksgiving story directly related to that outfit. And when I came across that, I thought, oh my God, I have got to find a place in this book for this. And that was, I was probably on my second pass of the book when I was doing that. So some stuff you go look at, some stuff you find, and then you dig and it leads you somewhere else. And so it's kind of a combination of all those things.
So bottom line, a lot went into it, and people should get two because they're small.
Yes, that's right.
It's not a huge book, so you might as well just buy two of them. It makes a great book. It makes a great gift. We're heading into the
You always buy one and give one away, right?
Buy one and give one away. Yeah, and
that's right.
Absolutely. So it's a little after 8, and I want to ask the two of you if you're okay to take a couple extra minutes for questions, and then I can let the folks who are in the audience know that obviously if they need to head out, they can. because we looked at an hour, and then tech issues, we got started a couple of minutes late. So do you want to take a couple
fine
more
with it, of
questions?
course. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Denise?
Okay.
Yeah. So Rocco, Thanksgiving meal question for you, which is, could you give suggestions for how to make a good stuffing?
Nice sweet spot. Thank you, whoever asked the question.
That's from Patricia, Roy Patricia, and then specifically in bird or out, and do we need to get into the stuffing dressing thing, like the difference?
Sure, we could. I mean, I'm hardly an expert on on how that works and the verbiage. Yeah, but let me just say
you can be a stuffing hero as well as a gravy.
Stuffing is very easy to make. It's simply tasty bread. It's breadcrumbs that have been seasoned. That's all it is. So diced breadcrumbs, diced bread or breadcrumbs or leftover bread that you crush with your hands in a pan with a lot of butter, poultry seasoning or fresh sage, celery, carrots, and onion for a start is a great stuffing. It's supposed to be a foil to the bird and the gravy and the cranberry sauce. It's not supposed to be climbing Kilimanjaro. It's not supposed to be the thing, the pursuits. It's just a side dish. So just give it some attention, but don't spend your whole time worrying about the stuffing. I'm a big fan, and I'll shock you with this. Stovetop to the rescue if you need it. Just make sure you start off with some fresh breadcrumbs and add a little bit of stovetop stuffing from the box, and you'll have great stuffing. It's the stuffing everyone loves. You'll avoid lots of fights. But if you want to make it fresh, you can. It's poultry seasoning, usually sage, tarragon, parsley, those herbs. And it's essentially warm bread, lightly seasoned with butter and those herbs. Now, if you make it inside the bird, you're going to do two things. You're going to ask the bird to do a lot more work than it needs to. You're going to prevent it from cooking on time. You're going to create a barrier between the bird and the heat source. Radiant heat travels in waves, and when it hits the stuffing versus the bird, it's going to take a little time for the heat to travel through the stuffing before it gets to the bird. So usually you end up with bad stuffing and an overcooked turkey. So do it on the side, do it on the stove. It doesn't need to be baked. It's very simple. It's one of the easiest things. And I don't care if you call it dressing or stuffing. I think that's a regional thing, and I'm not sure what the difference is, to be honest with you. But I find that there's a lot of dread and panic at Thanksgiving. Please stop. There's no need for all of that. There's no need for all of that. People are happy to be sitting down eating reasonably moist turkey. That's all you have to do. Don't expect more of yourself than that. And make sure you have an abundant alcohol source, and you'll be fine.
I don't eat turkey, but you had me at bread, like just tasty bread.
I made my stuffing mix, and then I put them in big muffin pans. So I had stuffing muffins.
Wow.
Like individual stuffings.
Wow. Boom.
Individual, so imagine those muffin tins with the big,
yes.
Really big. Okay. So you put the stuffing in there, and there's no yeast involved. So you don't have to, you can pile it over because it's not going to rise. And then what I find is, because I'm one of those people who likes to pick off the crispy parts of the stuffing. So I find the crispy to moist ratio when you do the stuffing muffin is exceptional. But here's the best part. The day after, cold stuffing muffins, you slice them in half and you put a slice of turkey on there.
Oh boy, that sounds amazing. That sounds so good.
It's
so good.
So Patricia says, and maybe you already do, let's call it a stuffing. I mean, if you're not already calling it a stuffing, it sounds like maybe we'd need to call it a stuffing.
I don't know. Down here, stuffing, I mean, people say stuffing already.
Well, that's true. That's true. Then it does sound a little bit like stuffing without the G, but yeah.
I like it though. I like it.
Okay.
I like it a lot.
All right. Who's ready for Thanksgiving right now? I think that's the real.
I'm one of those people who enjoys the Thanksgiving meal, more than one time a year. I think it's the greatest menu ever devised. It's perfect.
Yeah,
literally perfect.
And any excuse really. Okay, so There was another question for Denise, and actually I think you talked a little bit about your process, but this is, Lauren asked if you have a favorite part of the process. A favorite part of the process, because you talked about your process, you know, about researching, and maybe you don't have a favorite part, but Rocco, you can tell us as well, since you're also write books. Yeah, so both of you
think about this too.
Yeah, so, favorite part
for me, I mean, I love, and this comes because I started out in journalism. So at the good old Village Voice, may she rest in peace. But I love research. So I could spend, like, I walk into archives and I will walk out eight hours later, and you know, the gloves and the old photos and the microfiche and the musty papers and the onion skin. I love all of that stuff. You see old letters that have like stamps and postmarks from places that, you know, they don't call it that place anymore. I just love it. So that there's a real romance, I think, to physically touching things that somebody else touched hundreds of years ago, and stationery and their pen. And you research people, like when I was doing that last castle, I mean, I could spot Edith Vanderbilt's handwriting like in 2 seconds, you know, and George's too, because you've seen so many of them. And then George had Crane stationery, so I got Crane stationery, you know. So it's to me, there's a real kind of tactile love for that. But as far as like actually putting a book together, I love revising, and much more than I do the first draft. I love revising, because once you have an entire body of work, a whole story to work with, you can really start to make even the smallest little changes can completely change the flow or rhythm of a story. And you can really start to see it. It's easy to make little changes and just really help the story come alive. I mean, you have to do a lot of research too, though, Rocco. I mean, what do you like about do you like?
I was just chuckling. I'm no longer allowed to revise.
Are you one of the people who won't stop?
I've written 8 books with my editor, and she no longer allows me to revise things. I get 1 pass, and that's it. She does any revision that's required, because I'm the perpetual reviser. I'll revise 50, 60, 100, you know, as much time as you'll give me, I'll keep revising. Yeah. And then I get really into the layout and design, because cookbooks are very visual. And I've learned over the years that the layout and design are what hook people, and ultimately what helps you instruct a person on how to put a dish together. The photo of the dish, the photo of the ingredients, the assembly process. I love doing step-by-step assembly photos, which drives my editor crazy, of course. I'll submit a book with, I've submitted books with 10,000 photos in my career. And of course, I'll end up with 600 photos, but that's 500 more than would have been in the book. So it's a win, you know? So I'm really, of course, I'm a walking research and development department, because every day you cook, you're doing research and development, it's all trial and error. And I'm always working on new recipes. So that's a very big part of it. But I really do love design, graphic design, layout, photography. I style the dishes. I make the dishes when we do the photo shoots. I work closely with the photographers. I work closely with the graphic artist who's designed 10 of my books now. And I think that's where you really can put polish on a cookbook. Recipes, of course, have to be good, have to work, you know, have to be around 10 ingredients or less. Can't have more than 1 strange ingredient. But it's got to really look sexy and look inviting in the photos for people to get into it, you know, and to even try your recipes.
Oh yeah.
So apparently most cookbooks are read in bed at night and never cooked from. So this is what I've been told over and over. They're basically leafed through like magazines. So it makes sense that there should be a lot of effort put into the design.
I absolutely believe that, and have done that. Just
Yeah, you're guilty of that. Okay.
It's not
Well, as
about
long as
me,
you
but
paid
I'm
for the
just
book, we're okay.
I'm just saying, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I own way more cookbooks than I have ever or will ever use, and that's a thing that happens for sure. Yeah. So, and I know I'm not alone. That's why I'm saying it out loud. So why don't we end on that note? Because it's a quarter after, and some people might need to go eat right now. Right. So I just want to say again how delightful this has been. Just being able to spend some time with both of you. Denise, congratulations again. We're so thrilled for you and your new book, and always so happy to see you and to talk to you.
Sharing it with me.
Yeah, and Rocco, welcome and thank you. It's just
my pleasure. Thank you.
You're part of the Malaprop family now, man.
Absolutely.
Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's still hanging with us, and
thank you,
and for coming out, for buying Denise's book. We know that that's how you got here this evening. If you have been checking out the chat, we've got links to Denise's book, to Rocco's books, to the Independent Restaurant Association, saverestaurants.com. So please support, I just want to say this out loud, in addition to supporting independent booksellers, please also support independent restaurants. And
thank you.
businesses.
After the US government, we are the second largest employer in the country. So you're supporting probably 5 out of 10 people you know.
Yeah. The restaurant industry is huge. I mean, in Asheville, we know this.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We know how much love we need to give to the people in our restaurants. Katie Button locally is really involved in with the independent restaurants as well. So thank you for doing that, and for just putting your, if it's your money, putting that where your heart is. If it's your time, if it's just your energy and your thoughts, just if you don't have the money, just putting all of that, where your heart is. And thank you. So I'm grateful. I just want to say a little mini Thanksgiving, how grateful I am for y'all and this wonderful conversation this evening, because that seems appropriate, and it's wonderful to be reminded to be grateful of things. And before I hit the end button, I just want to give the last words to you. Both. So maybe, Rocco and Denise.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Malaprops. It's not a book launch for me if Malaprops isn't involved. So I feel so lucky to have you guys in my life. And thank you, Rocco, for being game to do all of this virtual nuttiness. And I can't wait to have you down here to Asheville for a proper bookstore event and some very good food. We're going to hit the restaurants hard.
Thanks, and let's not forget Wiley Cash, another great author who put us two together. So
that's right, for introducing us and getting us together and making this happen. And thanks to everybody who logged on tonight. Thank you for your support. It really does mean a lot. And everybody stay well, be safe, be happy. Thank you.
Stay well and safe, and happy Thanksgiving when it rolls around.
Bye, everybody.
Good night. Thank you all.